Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 28 of In My Plant-Based Kitchen. I am Emma. I'm a registered holistic nutritionist and a certified plant-based chef. And it is the day of the week that I invite you into my kitchen to talk about plant-based foods, nutrition, lifestyle, what to eat, how to eat it, how to get the most out of your food. And this week, I want to address some of the questions that have been coming in. We had a full Veganuary schedule and I didn't get a chance to work these in. So I thought I'd do an episode addressing some of them that have been in the lineup for a while. So let's get started without further ado. The first question is, do you recommend using nutritional yeast? What is the difference between nutritional yeast and brewer's yeast? And does it need to be kept in the fridge? All great questions to do with one of my favorite food additives. I guess it's an additive. You use it on stuff, you don't just eat it by itself. So I guess so. So nutritional yeast is a very healthy thing to eat. And yes, I would recommend including it in your diet. It is full of really wonderful minerals and antioxidants, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Unless you have an allergy to yeast, and then it's probably, even though it's an inactive form of yeast, it's probably a good idea to avoid it just in case. But as I said, it is a deactivated version. This is what it looks like. Some of them look a little bit different. You can get them in powdered form as well. But I'll just give you a little close up to this. This is the flaky kind of nutritional yeast. So you can see there. Oh, it has I love nutritional yeast. And I find that people tend to either love it or really not like it. So I would recommend not buying a huge package like this if it's your first time having it. Just buy a little bit. You can usually get it in the bulk section of health food stores. So go and make sure you ask for nutritional yeast. If you want to let them know you're a real vegan or vegetarian pro, call it Nooch. That's the familiar term for it. But like I said, it is very different from baker's yeast, which you would use to make bread, or brewer's yeast, which you would use to make beer. It is a very different flavor and it has different quality. So make sure you're getting the nutritional yeast. Nutritional yeast is grown specifically as a food product. And the yeast cells are killed during the process of making it. It's grown on molasses or sugar or something like that. And then it is pasteurized to stop the growth process. It is harvested and then washed and then dried into these flakes that are then sold as the product, nutritional yeast. So you can get fortified or unfortified versions. I would recommend making sure you read the label and make sure you're getting a fortified version, because they have a lot of great nutrients added to it. So nutritional yeast is really high in protein. You're not generally eating handfuls of it, of course. You're eating a couple of tablespoons probably at a time. But it does have 18 amino acids in it, the fortified one generally. And it also is very rich. It's a really good source of B vitamins, so especially vitamin B6 and vitamin B12. Often people who are on a plant-based, or anybody who's on a plant-based diet should be supplementing with vitamin B12. It's not something you want to become deficient in. There's lots of information about that online from lots of doctors. And but if you do want me to talk about that or send further information, just let me know. But B12 is something you should be supplementing with. Nutritional yeast is a source of it, but it is unclear exactly how much would be in any particular product. And you'd need to be eating it every day, and quite a bit of it every day, like a couple tablespoons of it every day, to make sure that you're getting it from, and it's just better to supplement with it, honestly. But I think it's a good policy to just take a supplement. It's very easy. Anyways, what else did I want to say about this? Nutritional yeast has a really savory, cheesy flavor. It's great to use to make sauces. I have a Nooch dressing, salad dressing, or a dressing you can use on a power bowl or something like that, that I'll share the recipe for with this week's this episode, if you'd like to try it. It's oil-free. It has chickpeas used to thicken it. So it's low fat, but super high in all kinds of different nutrients. And it's creamy. It's absolutely delicious. So I will share that with you. It also, as I mentioned earlier, has a lot of antioxidants, minerals. It's got trace amounts of chromium and zinc and all kinds of good stuff. The B vitamins that are really important for energy production. They help in the metabolism of our carbohydrates and our fats and our proteins. So they're really helpful for that. And it means that we can use our fuel from our foods better. And the B vitamins also help us to manage stress. So really, really important to get enough B vitamins in your diet. And nutritional yeast is a good way to do that. The other way that you can use, I mentioned adding, using nutritional yeast in sauces or dressings, but you can also just add it to some salad, just sprinkle it over your salad. Or if you're having a savory oatmeal, like one I shared a couple of weeks ago, you could sprinkle it on there. You could sprinkle it over your popcorn. That's one of the a favorite way to dress up some popcorn that a lot of people like. And if you don't want to use, if you're not using oil or butter, which is a really good thing, you could also always sprinkle it with apple cider vinegar to make the nutritional yeast stick and put it on there. And it's got just got a really nice cheesy flavor that a lot of people really love. Nutritional yeast also helps to maintain a healthy bacteria balance in your gut. So it's important for immune health, gut health. It's helpful for good, proper blood production. So it can help people who have issues with anemia. And yeah, it's just good for all kinds of things. There's lots of information about this online, but it is different from brewer's yeast, back to the question, or baker's yeast. So do make sure you're getting the correct one, because brewer's yeast and baker's yeast are very bitter, and you'll taste it and think, oh my God, this is disgusting. I don't want to eat that on my popcorn. So, so this is the one that you're looking for. The other thing that was in the question was, do you need to keep it in the fridge? And the answer to that is no, it does not need to be refrigerated, although you can keep it in the fridge. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's fine kept in a jar, or I go through it really quickly, so I just keep it in the bag that it comes in. But if you're going to have it for a longer period of time, it's usually good for a couple of years. Just keep it somewhere where it's not sitting in the sun, somewhere cool in your pantry. Dark is always better, just to slow down any kind of, any kind of spoiling. But it's really very resilient. It's not going to spoil, so it doesn't need to be kept in the fridge. Okay, the second question I have for today was, I've lately become curious about how to honor the ingredients we rely upon to create delicious and nutritious whole foods plant-based dishes. I've come to realize that trying to replace the traditional dishes I was eating before set me up for a lot of disappointment. I'm now focusing on creating dishes that bring out the best of whole foods plant-based ingredients. And so actually this is less of a question than a comment, but I really appreciated the person who sent this in. Really important point. And so I thought I would mention it today, because it goes back to something I've been talking about over the last number of months about the importance of reimagining your plate if you're transitioning to a more whole foods plant-based diet, especially when you're getting away from those transition foods and trying to make your meals out of those whole foods plant-based ingredients, which what I mean by that are things that are minimally processed, your beans, your legumes, your grains, and your fruits and vegetables, your nuts and seeds, those things that you actually recognize as foods and not food products per se. So I really that is what I try to encourage, and that what I try to do myself as much as possible, because I think that is that is where we're going to get the nutrition that we need to fuel our bodies to be really healthy and resilient over the long term. So like I said, reimagining the plate, going back to, I've done a couple of different episodes on template type of dishes, one on power bowls, one on grain salads. These are meal formats that help you to reimagine your lunch or your dinner. Instead of thinking of it as a meat main with some vegetables on the side, maybe some rice or a grain for a third component of the plate. We're looking at the plate as a whole and thinking, okay, so how do we get all of these components so we're getting all the nutrition we need? So what that means is really designing your plate, making vegetables the superstar, number one, instead of a side dish, but really thinking about, okay, so if I'm making a meal and I'm not necessarily following a recipe, do I have my beans and legumes? So your chickpeas or your lentils or your black beans or your kidney beans or your tofu, tempeh, edamame, something like that, that will give you a good boost of protein. It also gives you a good boost of fiber, and also usually calcium, iron, lots of important minerals, as well as other nutrients as well. So your bean and legume is a really important component to try to get in at least most days. And then if you're, the next thing to think about is your grain. So are you having some rice with your dinner, maybe some whole grain noodles, maybe you're having some quinoa or farro or something like that. And that's going to be your whole grain element. That's going to give you lots of, again, fiber and some protein and some lots of different lots of different minerals and vitamins, again, depending on which one one you're having. And then of course, like I said, the vegetables are the superstar. So how many can you get in? How many can you include? Thinking about having some raw, some cooked, and also making sure you're getting some leafy greens in, because we know those are the most nutrient dense, protective vegetables that we can include on a daily basis. Some fruit, if it's applicable, maybe in a grain salad, you're having some apricots or some raisins or something like that, including. And then, of course, your nuts and seeds, which are sometimes in the form of, so that's a healthy fat that's going to help you to absorb your fat soluble vitamins. And also nutrients, other nutrients as well that are fat soluble, and you can often include those in the form of a healthy dressing or sauce, or just as a whole unroasted raw nut or seed, and they're going to be packed with vitamins and minerals, zinc, and all kinds of helpful nutrients as well, antioxidants, phytochemicals. So those are some of the things to think about when you're thinking about your reimagining your plate and honoring those vegetables, as this person mentioned in their comment, or honoring those foods, I mean. So the other thing to think about, again, I've mentioned this before, but I think it's worth repeating, is color. When you're thinking about how to reinvent those dinners, how many colors can you include? How are you eating the rainbow in this meal? Are you eating the rainbow in every meal? And if you are, you're doing a great job of getting all the different nutrients that you need, because those colors generally translate to different types of nutrients that your body needs regularly. And then a couple of other little tips that I have around this is, when you're really getting into this and you're starting to think, okay, so how can I increase the nutrition? Is there a way that I can increase the nutrition, make my meal even more nutritionally valuable to me? Is to think about, are there things that you can add that will bring a bit more diversity, a bit more color? Often these are greens. So I like to put out the question, can you put this on a bed of greens all the time? So if I'm having pasta, can I put it on a bed of greens? Absolutely. Can I add some greens to a chili or a curry? These are things where they're not going to be overly affected, the food or the end result of the dish, but you're going to be adding all that extra nutrition. Are there ways that you can add some beans into something? We talked about oatmeal in another episode. Can you put a couple of tablespoons of mashed white beans in your oatmeal that you hardly notice them, but they're going to add a fiber, a nutrition boost to that meal? Maybe smoothies, you can add a tablespoon of cooked white beans or chickpeas into your smoothies. And again, that's going to add some fiber and some egg, or it's going to help that smoothie to stay with you longer. It's going to be more nutritious, and it's just a way to just sneak those extra things into these meals. So once you get the hang of this, once you start to get the hang of this, you can start to think about those extra additions. And then the next piece of that is also, can I add a garnish that is going to make the nutritional availability even better? And so one great example of this is adding some raw cruciferous to a meal where you have a cooked cruciferous vegetable. And the reason to do this, so cruciferous vegetables, just as a review, we're talking about broccoli and cauliflower and cabbage and Brussels sprouts and horseradish and kale. All of those are cruciferous vegetables. So if you have cooked cruciferous vegetables, which is a wonderful thing to do, it's great to cook them, because for many of them, it makes them a little bit more bioavailable to us. That meaning we can absorb the nutrients better. But when you cook them, one of the enzymes is destroyed. And this is something that Dr. Greger talks about in quite extensively in How Not to Die and videos that he has. But when you cook cruciferous vegetables, an enzyme is destroyed. And if you haven't chopped, you can do two things. You can either, say you're having broccoli, chop the broccoli up, wait for 15-20 minutes, and the enzyme that exists in the raw broccoli will help to develop the sulforaphane, which is the powerful cancer-fighting properties in cruciferous vegetables. So it will develop while that broccoli's sitting there. But most of us come home from work, want to get dinner on the table, are not going to chop up our broccoli and then leave it to sit for 20 minutes. We don't want to have to think about doing that. So you can cook your broccoli, chop it up, cook it, and then just have a little garnish of a couple of pieces of shredded red cabbage, for example. I always have red cabbage on hand because the raw has that enzyme in it, and it's going to help to activate the sulforaphane in the cooked broccoli, and away you go to the races with this super nutritious cancer-fighting vegetable that you have just elevated the nutrition for yourself and your family. So knowing a few of these little things, and you don't have to remember all those details, all you have to remember is, if I'm having some cooked cruciferous, have a little bit of raw on the side, so maybe some shredded Brussels sprouts that are raw, or some shredded cabbage. Like I said, that's easy to keep. It doesn't go bad quickly. So I always have a red cabbage in my fridge, and I will just put that on my meal. If I'm having a salad or even a curry dish or whatever, you can just have it as a small garnish. You don't need much, and it gives you that extra power boost. So that's sort of the next step in this whole thing, and a really good one to remember. And there's other examples that I'll share with you over time. The last question. So this also, actually, there's one more thing that I want to say about this particular comment, which would be to embrace the herbs and spices. And this is it's a game changer, because herbs and spices are your antioxidant, your phytochemical, your anti-inflammatory superheroes. And they're what makes food interesting for us. They're what gives us a flavor profile. They're what makes us able to use less salt, and they're what really makes food an enjoyable experience and a creative experience. So if you're not, and I don't necessarily mean hot spices, I just mean flavor profiles. So we'll talk a little bit more about this, but this brings us to the last question, which is somebody who saw that I had this book, the Vegetarian Flavor Profile, sitting over there. I always have books sitting over there that I'm using. And she said, I saw you have the book Vegetarian Flavor Bible on the counter, and I decided to purchase it. I just received it yesterday, and it is a bit overwhelming, and I'm not surprised because it is overwhelming. Yeah, I'll talk about that in a sec. Would you consider a video demonstration on how to use the book in day-to-day life? So I've had this one on the shelf for a while, so I'm sorry, I'm just getting to it now. But the short answer is I mostly use it for inspiration. So I got this when so it's the Vegetarian Flavor Bible by Karen Page. And it is a wonderful resource. It is not a beginner's resource. So if you love cooking and you love experimenting and you love being creative, I would absolutely highly recommend it. If you are just starting out and you're looking more for recipe ideas and just trying to get your feet wet with vegetarian or vegan or more plant-based meals, I'd say maybe put this one on the shelf, keep a note of something that you might want to get when you are getting a bit more adventurous. I picked a copy of this up when I was going to culinary school, and it is really, really helpful because for a number of reasons. So I'll kind of talk a little bit about the different ways that I use it, and then also some handy things in it that could be helpful for people who are getting started. So like I said, I use it mostly for inspiration. So if I'm like anybody, I love cooking, but I get in a rut and sometimes, and I want to kind of switch things up, and I want to get out of using the same ingredients together all the time and sort of think about something different. And when I went to school, I went to the School of Natural Cookery, and that was the whole idea of the program was to cook intuitively. And so this does not come naturally to me. Before I went to school, I was very much a recipe follower. And I felt like if I didn't have a recipe, I wasn't quite sure. And so the school that teaching was very valuable to me because it really helped me to understand how to be creative and how to start to think about food and ingredients differently. But like I said, I get into a rut sometimes, or if I'm developing recipes, that's another time I'll pull it out. And it's usually when you're starting with one ingredient and you're thinking, oh, what can I do with this? What do I want to do with this? How do I want to use it, and be creative? So the example I pulled out was, say I have some beets. It is, let's see, it is probably early autumn and all the beets are starting to come out, or late summer, and they are getting, have these beautiful beets around. And I really like to try to cook seasonally when I can, because those ingredients are the freshest and the most nutritious that they can be. And we are so fortunate here where I live. We have a number of amazing local farms, organic farms. And so and I have a lot of very generous gardener friends who often give me things. So if someone drops off a bunch of beets, what am I going to do with them? So, I might do the usual things like steep them and slice them to make them into a beet salad or something like that. But I'm thinking, I want to do something a little bit different. And so what you'll see here, I don't know how, it's probably not, but you'll get the idea that there are lists, okay? So what it does for you is that first it tells you a little bit about the ingredients. So what season is this fresh in? What kind of flavor does it have? Which of course, most of us know what beets taste like, but this is a very comprehensive sort of vegetarian focused book. So it's got that information for a lot of ingredients you may not be so familiar with, which I'll come back to shortly. It's got information about the nutritional profile, you know, is it primarily carbohydrate, protein, fat? So beets in this case are 86% carbohydrates, how many calories you'll get per serving. It's got information about how to cook something. So for example, with beets, you can bake them at 350 for about 60 minutes, or you can boil them for about 20 to 45 minutes, depending on the size. You can grate them for grains and salads. So even this beginning information starts to kind of think, oh, I never thought of grating beets. That's a great idea. I'm going to grate them up and put them on my power bowl. So example, very simple. It might give you some ideas about how to prepare the thing differently. You can julienne them, pickle them, pressure cook them. It gives you information about all of that. You can, of course, eat them raw or roast them or saute them, shred them, steam them, and it gives you directions for all of those things. Very, you know, simple directions, but it's enough to get you started. It's going to tell you about the botanical relatives. So chard, quinoa, spinach, Swiss chard. They're all botanical relatives of beets. And then it gives you a list of food, and it has a ranking system, which I won't get into, but has a ranking system about foods that pair well with it. So foods and flavors, spices. So everything from agave nectar, it's all alphabetized. Agave nectar, allspice, anise, apples, arugula. So you can see it's a variety of flavors and different foods that pair well with it. And it tells you which ones are, you know, absolute, definitely great ones to pair it with, and other ones that are good, but, you know, suggestions kind of thing. So it has a long list of those. And then it has what I like, my favorite part is the flavor affinities. So it's got beets plus 2 or 3 or more other ingredients that you can think about pairing together. And it's not giving you a recipe. It's not telling you this is a recipe for a beet salad with feta cheese and arugula. It's telling you, I'm just pulling that out because that's the first thing here, beets plus arugula plus feta cheese plus balsamic vinegar plus walnuts. That to me is a very familiar beet salad type of idea, but it's not giving you a recipe for that. It's just saying that those ingredients go well together and they're nice things to pair together. So say I'm looking at this and like I said, I've got some beets. I've decided I want to roast them. And I'm thinking, you know, I'd really like a late summer roasted beet dish. I'm going to serve them on some watercress because I see that watercress is something that beets go nicely with, or and I want a bit of a dressing. So I'm looking down this list and I'm seeing that beets, you know, the suggestion that beets go well with tahini and yogurt. And I'm thinking, okay, I could get a vegan yogurt or make a vegan yogurt and then add it to some tahini. I can imagine that flavor, and then I'm seeing that dill and lemon are things that it pairs well with. So I'm thinking of a dressing now with those ingredients. And so then I get my ingredients out and start smelling and tasting and experimenting with that combination. And maybe I decide that it needs something else, and maybe I decide that it you know, it kind of, I think what it does is it takes some of the guesswork away and it just gets the inspiration flowing. That's how I use it most often. And so I hope that's helpful. It is, like I said, really not something that you, like this, I know that can seem overwhelming to a lot of people. And if you're not there yet, then probably this is not for you. But if you love to cook and you love to get your creative juices going, this is a great resource. Another thing that it does is it lists, if you love world cuisines and different kinds of, you know, incorporating different flavor profiles as in terms of cuisines, it will list all the foods and flavors if you go to a particular cuisine. So say Moroccan, for example, I pulled up another page here. So I think, okay, I'd really like to make a couscous salad. I'm going to make it, you know, that seems we went to Morocco and had a lot of couscous salads. So I think, okay, so what would go in that? It gives me a whole list of things: almonds, apricots, bell peppers, carrots, cayenne, chickpeas. And it's not saying that you put all of these things in, but it gives you some ideas of things to choose from that could maybe go together in that type of cuisine, and it will you know, lend itself to that kind of flavor. So that's another idea of a way that you can use it. And there were a couple of things I wanted to mention that are really helpful. So I mentioned that in terms of new ingredients. So for example, one of them is umeboshi vinegar. That's something that I came across in cooking school. I'd never heard of it before. I'd never tasted it before, but I love it. It is actually, it's not actually technically a vinegar, which it says here. It is a brine, so it's quite salty. It's a Japanese sort of vinegar. And you can get it at health food stores or lots of sort of ethnic grocery shops. And it is a fabulous thing. I like using it to, you know, in marinades, or sometimes if I want to do a little bit of a salty seed, like a roasted seed, and I want to use a little bit of a salt on it for a flavor enhancement, then I'll use umeboshi vinegar, and it's a plum vinegar. And so it tells you what to expect. So it's going to tell you it's sour, it's salty, it has fruity notes of lemon. So it gives you a little bit more information. So if it's something that you've heard about, or you're somebody's telling you about, or you're watching a video about, then you can look it up and kind of get some information about it. It has a lot of information about different kinds of tofus, how to cook them, how to use them. So it's a great starting resource in that way. And then the other thing I really like in terms of a beginner type resource is on page 76. Go back to this. It actually has, oh no, that's not the right one. It's page 76. It has a section on getting to the root of cravings. And so a lot of times when people are starting out on a plant-based diet and they're missing foods that are familiar to them, this can be quite a neat thing to explore. So it says, you know, for example, if you're craving chicken, some of the things that might give you a similar texture that could help you out, other than it does actually list, you know, chicken products, like not chicken products, but chicken like simulated products. But it, you know, also talks about jackfruit, which is, for example, something that you might not have ever tried. So you could look that up, and that can take you on a whole new exploration. So lots of possibilities, lots of creative ideas. I hope, like I said, I hope that's helpful. I hope all those answers are helpful. And if you're listening and you have a question and you'd like an answer to it, I also have taken note of things. Someone requested a video about baking, which I will do in the coming weeks. And if you have something that you'd like to learn more about or hear about, or if you have a question, I am really happy to answer those. So send it to me via the form or email, or even put it into the comments. Subscribe to my newsletter. These are all the ways that you can contact me. I love hearing from you. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye for now.